This is Talk It Out with Father Don Mowery, founder of Youth Service USA. Talk It Out has been on the air for more than 40 years. And now here's your host, Father Don Mowery.
This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Good morning. This is Father Don Mowery, invited to stay tuned and talk it out with a very special guest. And our very special guest to begin with this morning is Nicole Fox. And Nicole, tell us who you are.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm very happy to be here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for arranging this show, too.
Oh.
You did a lot of work on it. We appreciate it very much. And the program this morning, the show is what?
The show
that we're talking about.
It's for multiple sclerosis. It's also known as MS.
Uh-huh.
And it's a disease of the central nervous system.
All right, Nicole, why do you and the people with you this morning, you have 3 people with you, why do you all want people in Memphis to know about MS?
Okay, I want everyone to know about MS because it has changed drastically over the years. And I'll explain. But when I was first diagnosed 20 years ago, there was almost nothing they could do. I literally just made the cut. If I had been diagnosed a year before, my neurologist would have sent me home and told me to get ready for my wheelchair. And basically, I want everyone to know that it's not like that anymore. I mean, I'm living a full life with MS. I'm doing all the things I never thought possible. And that's For example, I'm running the young adults group for anyone with MS can come talk to me and I can help people. I can, go out, have fun with my friends, have a great time with life. I just have some limitations, but nothing that stands in my way of living life to the fullest.
What kind of limitations do you have, Nicole?
Well, for me personally, I do get a little bit tired. I may get a little bit clumsy. And when I see a staircase without a rail, I start getting a little bit nervous because I definitely know I need someone to maybe guide me down the stairs, but nothing, I'm going to live with that. All I'm asking is to live with this, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm living life to the full.
How long ago was it that you found that you had MS?
Okay, so it was right before my 21st birthday. It was July of 1995, and I was with my sorority sisters, and I was having a great time, a great night with my girlfriends. I think I had a little bit too many wine coolers, maybe one too many. Nothing too exciting, maybe one too many. Woke up the next day, and everything was blurry. And I just thought that I was I'd had too much to drink, maybe a little bit hungover, because then when I went to go walk to my car, there was a staircase without a rail. I walked down, I was tripping down the stairs. And my friends, we were all laughing. We thought, oh my goodness, what is wrong with you? I need to get home. I need to sleep this off. By the time I got home, I started having problems with my coordination. So I went to take a shower, thinking that I would feel better after a nice shower. Well, I felt worse because I was dropping the shampoo bottle. I was just being clumsy. And anyone now knows that a hot shower in the middle of the summer with MS, not a good idea. Not a good idea. But we didn't know at that time I even had MS. So then I decided I was going to sleep it off. Take a little nap, maybe I'd feel better. Well, when I woke up, I still felt terrible. Still, my coordination off, balance off, my vision was not right. So, as Harry can tell you, we both come from big, fat Greek families. And the number one solution in our family is if you're not feeling well, just eat something. You'll feel better if you eat. Believe me. So my mom, my sweet little mom, made me a snack. Well, of course it didn't do a thing. I still felt terrible. So that entire summer, I was back and forth to doctors. They thought I had things from swimmer's ear to Bell's palsy because one side of my face went numb. And come to find out, nothing was working. None of the medication was working. By that time, it was time to move back in the dorms, time to start school again. Went to the University of Memphis. I was having to have friends walk me to class because I was so off balance. Back in my day, we had a chalkboard, and I took notes. Well, I couldn't see the chalkboard, and I lost control. I couldn't take notes either, so I had to drop out of school. And my family thought it was time for a neurologist. So I went to a neurologist. He did a series of tests on me, MRI, dreaded spinal tap. But by that time, so much time untreated had gone by that I ended up in the hospital for 6 weeks. And that's when I had to learn how to walk, talk, and feed myself. And I always tell everybody what a terrible time it was because, you know, I had just turned 21. All my friends, all my sorority sisters were coming to visit me, my boyfriend, you know, they were all doing their thing, their college thing. They were goofing around in the dorms, skipping class or going to class or whatever you want to say. And then here I am on the stroke floor at the hospital learning how to tie my shoe again and learning how to say my name. And it was pretty hard, but I did it. And I went back to school the next semester and everything was great. Started on the only medication they had at that time. And everything was great for about 2 years until I started getting sick again. In and out of the hospital. You know, by this time I'm 23, and all my friends now are starting to get married and have their families, and I am sick again all the time and missing out on what I felt I was missing out on my life, missing out on everything. So about that time, my doctor decided it was time to switch to another medication. And because luckily I had options. There was a time when nobody had anything and there was nothing they could do. But for me, they were able to say, let's switch to another medication. And I did. And this summer will be 15 years. And I haven't had a relapse since I started that medication. And like I say, I have limitations, like you heard. So I know I have MS, but all I'm asking is to live with it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm living with it. And that's why I want to help so many people. Because bless my family and friends, they tried so hard to understand and help me get through it. But no one understands what you're going through unless they actually have MS.
When were you told, Nicole, you have MS?
What did I do?
No, when were you told?
When were I told?
How long after you were feeling bad?
It was 3 months after my very first symptom that I was told.
The doctor came in and said...
The doctor came in. I was with my brother and my parents. And he came in and said, have they told you? And we said, told me what? We thought they were going to tell me I had a sinus infection, that I had an inner ear infection. They said, well, you may have MS. And I still remember exactly. I mean, I collapsed in my brother's arms. My dad is a very dark Greek man, and he was as white as a sheet because the only thing we knew of MS was the worst case scenario. It was the worst thing you could think of. And I thought I was going to be just like that. And we all thought I was going to be just like that. And that's why I thought my life was over. I had a vision of how my life was going to be. I remember looking up at that ceiling and thank God it's nothing. My life is nothing like I thought. And that's why I'm doing this. And that's why I want to help so many people. Because I want them to know that you can live a full life with MS. There are just what I call limitations, or just, I say plan B about a lot of things, you know.
Nicole, how do you communicate your story to the people in Memphis besides like the radio this morning?
Well, I've spoken at different fundraisers. We have something that we usually do in the spring called the Brew Movement, and it's called the Brew Movement, and that's like it's a fun beer tasting. Our good friend Joe puts it on every year, and you know, I like to share my story at that. I've also shared it at different patient programs, which means like anyone who's on the medication that I take, they may have a dinner or lunch or whatever, and so I'll share my story as the advocate on that medication. But I've also spoken at the MS bike ride that we have in the fall. I've spoken at the MS walk which we have in the spring. I recently spoke at, it was called Battle of the Bands. Harry played at that, and I shared my story at that as well. So just any kind of, if I'm asked to share it at any event, I'm very happy to, because I want everyone to know.
What do people say when you share this? What are some of the comments you've gotten back?
I've had comments, mostly just how amazing it is, that they did not know, most people do not know that MS can be so highly livable, and that, wow, you haven't had a relapse in 15 years? How is that possible? And I'm like, well, I do everything I can to help myself, besides taking the medication and taking care of myself and getting my rest and exercise. There's a lot you can do, but, that's mostly, I hear people say, oh, what an inspiration. I want, if I know someone who was just diagnosed, I would love for them to talk to you. And I'm here. I'm here to counsel anybody and be that person that I didn't have.
Is there a chance that you might have a relapse?
Oh, absolutely. There's a chance.
And you may have said this already, but there is a chance.
Oh, yes, there's a chance. There is. And it's scary. And I have spent, when I was first diagnosed, I spent sleepless nights wondering when the next shoe was going to drop. I was scared all the time when that was going to happen. And I had to teach myself that it's out of my control. I can do everything and be proactive about MS, and I can do everything to take care of myself, but I never know. You don't know when it's going to happen. And so I can't lose sleep over something out of my control. It's just, that's how it is, like I said, I can be proactive about it, but.
Nicole, what is MS?
What is MS? Okay, well, multiple sclerosis. It's a disease of the central nervous system, which is your brain and spinal cord. It affects everyone differently. For me, it's my balance and coordination, and sometimes my vision and little things like that. Maybe numbness here and there, a little tingling. Other people, they have some pain. They have pain, or maybe some numbness in their legs or other extremities, or, other people, it's just their eye. So, like, maybe their eye, problems with, like, one eye or something. Everyone is just, I have a good friend who always says, I'm one of one person with MS. I mean, MS is like a snowflake. I'm never going to meet anybody who has the exact symptoms as me. I mean, each of us here are different. So
what about age and MS?
Well,
the younger people have MS more than older.
Well, they say you're diagnosed anywhere between the ages of 20 and 40 or 50, but 75% of women, and
really,
yeah, and I feel like maybe older people are diagnosed, but they've actually had problems for a long time, and they were undiagnosed for years and didn't know.
Yeah. I want you this morning, too, that you're here with us to talk about symptoms of MS, so that people listening might have some of these symptoms. They might go have it checked out and see what the symptoms are for.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that, like, for instance, my symptoms it was my vision. My vision was a little blurry at first, and then it became kind of double vision. And then late at night, sometimes my speech would slur, and I didn't understand what was going on with that. I had trouble with my balance. Like I was saying, like getting down the steps. It was just I was off balance. And I kept saying it was my left side was a little weaker than my right side. And I didn't understand what was going on. It mirrored the same thing as like a stroke. But, and like I said, I had some numbness in my face and tingling. And I had trouble like taking notes, writing with my, my coordination. I think other people have had pain and weakness and maybe blind in one eye. There's pain. Yeah.
How about some of the rest of you who might have some kind of other, would you like to introduce us to?
Let's talk to Harry.
All right, Harry, wait a minute. Harry, your last name again?
I'm Harry Conadiciotis.
Thank you very much, Harry.
You're welcome.
Okay.
There'll be a test at the end to see if you can pronounce it correctly.
Oh, golly. All right. Go ahead. Tell us about yourself.
Well, my first experience with MS, I believe it was in my legs and my arms. Basically, like, when you hit your funny bone in your elbow, it's that tingling sensation, but through your whole body, but through your whole arm. The first time really it happened for me, I was actually working out. I was doing butterflies, the weight when you lift weights like this way, and my whole arm went dead. I thought I was having a stroke. I couldn't move my arm at all.
How old were you, Harry?
I was, 10 years ago, so I was 32, 31, probably 31 at the time. The first symptoms I had where I really got concerned were in the summer of 2005 with mostly my feet, my arms, my legs. But there was I had a lot of problems when I was younger with my feet, my arms, my legs, and my back, which were kind of, I thought, which went to doctors for when I was young as third grade.
What kind of problem?
Basically, like
aching,
pains in my feet, my legs, my arms, my back. And once they did a MRI, they were like, "Oh, well, you've got lesions up and down your back from your spine. That's MS, and your lesions in your brain." But that was kind of that summer. There was kind of a lot of wake up call. Heat is a major trigger. I think that's for me at least. I think for a lot of other people too. So I started going to see some neurologists. I was, doctors at first, and then got sent to a neurologist and had the spinal tap, like a lot of people have. So for me, it was that kind of like not being able to move your arms or legs type of symptoms. Later on, the first medicine I was on it for about 2 years. And I was actually out in Seattle, and got overheated one time and got lost vision in my right eye. It took about 6 months for it to. They called it optic neurotic. Yeah, right. Yeah. So I lost vision for about 6 months in my right eye, and there's not really anything you can really do except, I guess they always say just relax. Just calm down, relax, and that's the...
And you thought this was MS?
Oh yeah, that's why I already knew it was MS at that point. I was diagnosed 2 days before Christmas of 2005, and after the time with my eye, I got moved to another medicine, and the last year I've been on a daily pill that has been great, and this last year has been the best that I've ever had. But for the most part, it's kind of one of those things you have to learn to live with. It's definitely something that you need to address and be positive about. I think positive thinking is really the best part about it. I mean, not the best part about it, but the main thing that you have to keep a stiff upper lip.
Yeah, Harry, are there things you cannot do now? Can you do your butterflies and work out now?
Well, I don't really. I used to go to the gym quite a bit, but I've started catching staph infections. I have a low immune system, so now every time I go to gyms are just too dirty for me to go to. I try to work out. I do a lot of yoga.
Hospitals?
Oh yeah, hospitals are dirty too. Haven't had to be in a hospital in a while. I do a lot of yoga and Pilates. To be honest, I think with MS, it's kind of made me more focused on my goals in life. I learned a lot about Terry Garr and Net Funicello and Exene Cervenka. All were women who had MS. That when I kind of started reading their stories, and I even met Exene Cervenka one time, and we had to talk about her MS and my MS and being musicians, and it was interesting to see her touring around playing and being an she was on the cover of I think an MS magazine last year or so.
Harry, is there any kind of support group for you? Or did you attend any kind of support group?
Well, Nicole, oddly enough, Nicole and I had already known each other.
Oh, yeah?
And so just through the Greek Society. And so, Nicole has been a great person I call her the MS cheerleader.
I can imagine.
Because she's there to pass information on and help people meet each other who need.
Mm-hmm. So was there, besides Nicole, was there any kind of support group?
Well, her support group was basically it. I would say I think the yams really started because she realized there wasn't anything like that in Memphis, or I don't even know in other parts of the country if there are or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, Harry, do you feel that's your responsibility now, or your pleasure, to acquaint other people who might have MS?
Yes, occasionally I meet people off the street who have MS, and then other people who I just kind of run into who it comes up in casual conversation. It's actually kind of amazing how many people actually have it. I think it's one of those diseases that people probably had it for years and were misdiagnosed or didn't know. They didn't know what it was. I think Nicole said earlier they didn't even really have medication until 1991. Which for me, I was 18 years old, so that would have been, pretty crippling thing to happen.
But more women than men.
75% women. I'm not really sure why that is, but that's the statistics.
Uh-huh. What about genetically? Is it?
I've heard recently that they're linking genetics to it, but I'm not really sure. From what I was always told before, they didn't really have an idea where it came from, other than stress was a trigger for people. But I think people's lives are pretty stressful, so saying no one does not have stress is, I don't know, how that really occurred or where that rationale came from.
Mm-hmm. Is there any particular place, hospital or whatever, that treats MS more than others?
Well, at one point, I went to the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida, and saw a few specialists down there. They were great.
Why'd you go there?
I went there because I felt like my doctors in Memphis needed a kick in the rear. I felt like they weren't listening. MS I think it's such an individualistic disease that a lot of doctors just kind of fly through it. And I felt like my doctor here wasn't paying attention, and so I decided to go over his head and went to some specialists in Jacksonville, Florida. And then at that point, I was really not able to stand. I wasn't able to see. I wasn't able to really do much of anything other than sit. So I was and my doctor, who was in Memphis, didn't really see a problem with it. And so I felt like, well, the medicine's not working. Let's do something else. And most of the doctors, too, a frustrating thing for a lot of people is that the doctors, they don't really have answers. They're not really sure either what causes it, what's going to help it. That's kind of the individualistic part of the whole MS thing. I kind of follow a somewhat diet, and,
Oh, you do?
Yes, there's a kind of MS diet out there. I mean, for me personally, I think just, as long as you don't overdo it, there's not really a call for a diet, but, you can't eat, granted, I ate Gus's fried chicken the other day, but I can't eat Gus's fried chicken 7 days a week.
What about red meat?
Particularly I don't really eat much red meat. I generally eat seafood and chicken if I eat meat. Most of the time, I don't eat dairy. I try to stay away from dairy, try to stay away from sugars. For the most part, eat somewhat on the healthy side. Eat your vegetables, little children's.
Mm-hmm. Harry, this morning on Talk It Out, what would you like for our listeners to learn from you? What would you like to communicate to them?
Well, I don't think MS or really any disease that anybody gets is really going to stop you from doing what you want. I think, like I said before, positive thinking and just living your life and doing what you want to do. I'm a musician. I used to tour a lot. I used to bring syringes on the road with me to take medicine, and it didn't stop me doing what I wanted to do, but I had to make adjustments to it. I had to make adjustments and I think everybody has to make adjustments in their lives for one thing or another. I mean, I think we're kind of a very overabundant society anyway. We don't need to gorge ourselves on everything, but being a musician, I feel like it's kind of a good scream therapy for anything in life to have an outlet. And in some ways, I'm lucky that I have that outlet, and I've made a living off of that outlet. So having MS has kind of like worked within it. And now I still perform, and I'll go on tour every once in a while. But for the most of the time, I have a recording studio that I work at, and I'm able to kind of mold my life around MS and molded MS into my life to where I can do things that I want and not don't feel held back for.
Are many of your friends aware that you have had MS?
Oh yes. A lot of them know. There's been, I didn't really talk about it for a long time. And then, I think a few years ago, there was an article in the Memphis Flyer, and it was mentioned, and I was kind of like, didn't really think much about it. And so it's kind of become aware. I played at MS Festival earlier this year, and I keep talking about how one day I'm going to kind of organize some kind of MS fundraiser. My wife and I are big animal lovers, so we work with the Tunica Humane Society down in Tunica, and so the MS and the cute little puppies are kind of our two main things.
Mm-hmm. Nicole, congratulations to you for arranging the program this morning and having people like Harry come and talk about MS, and yourself too.
Thank you.
So, who would you like to talk to next this morning on Talk It Out?
How about we talk to Crystal? Because it's time for a girl.
All right, introduce Crystal for us, would you?
Okay, this is Miss Crystal Gilreath. She's actually one of my best friends that I met when I was giving a speech about 6 years ago at what I was saying, it was a patient luncheon, and I saw her, and I said, I would love to meet you. You need to come to my support group. That's what I do. When I see someone young and beautiful with MS, I think, you need me.
Okay.
So here she is, Crystal.
Right. Good morning, Crystal, and welcome to Talk It Out.
Good morning.
So how did you happen to go to the same place where she was that time that you met?
Well, like Nicole mentioned, I had just started the medication, the particular medication that she and I are on currently, and they do have patient information sessions, and a lot of times they're either a lunch or a dinner. And my husband had gone with me. We were very new to, I guess, the MS community in Memphis. And so my husband and I went to lunch just to learn more about MS and the treatment that I had started. And so she said, she introduced herself and said, you need to come to our next Young Adults with MS support group. And I said, well, how young is young adult? Maybe I've aged out of that. And she goes, oh no, no, you haven't. I don't really think there's a maximum age. But we definitely have fun. And I think one of the best parts of it is that all of these people in this room have meant a lot to me and my husband and family, and I never would have known any of them otherwise. So MS has brought us together and really expanded my own support, social support in Memphis, and it's been great.
Mm-hmm. Crystal, how did you first learn that you had MS?
Well, I was diagnosed 6 years ago, and I just had my anniversary. We talk about that a lot, the anniversary of being diagnosed. I was actually at Jazz Fest in New Orleans, and after the first day, I was getting ready for bed, and I told my husband that his name is Chris, by the way. I said, I have this really weird spot on my back. It just felt strange. I now know that it was a numb patch on my back, but
a numb patch.
It was like an oval shape area, probably about the size of an orange, I would say. And I wouldn't have described it as numb at the time, but I now know that's what it was. And then the next morning, I woke up and had the same, it was still there, but then I had an area on my torso, on the front of my torso. And then over the course of the next 2 days, the entire right side of my body went numb. So by the time I arrived back in Memphis, I knew something was going on, wasn't real sure what. for some odd reason, I wasn't really scared because I wasn't, it was just numb. I wasn't in pain or anything. It was just, I had a little trouble walking. But I did go to the emergency room when I got back and was sent for an MRI that day. I count myself as a very lucky MS person because I was diagnosed very quickly. I went to the emergency room, had the MRI, saw the neurologist the next day, and he told me, I suspect you have MS.
Crystal, now, when you were down in New Orleans with your husband Chris,
yes,
and you said, I have a funny feeling on my back, did he look at your back?
Yes, he did.
Was there any kind of redness or swelling or?
No, not at all.
Just a feeling?
Just a sensation.
And then you got the sensation in the front?
Yes. And then
you came home?
And then I came home. Well, by the time I was home, the whole right side of my body went numb. A week later, my left side was also numb. And so,
could you walk okay?
I could walk with assistance, and, but it was, Nicole had mentioned coordination earlier. I couldn't coordinate my legs to work the way they should all the time. And keep in mind, I'll also interject this, that at the time, our son was 22 months old. And so I was at home caring for an infant at that time. So that was probably the scariest part is, I didn't want to be carrying him and fall down, those type of things. So I was very blessed to have family. My mom lives in Memphis, and so she helped a tremendous amount.
When did you first hear MS?
Well, the other, I guess, fortunate thing for me is I worked at the time in the field of disability. And so I had a coworker that I had worked with for several years who has MS. And so she and I worked closely together daily. I knew of her. She was diagnosed in college as well, as Nicole, like Nicole. And so I saw her living a beautiful life each day. And so I don't know if that contributed to me not being scared. I didn't have, no one in my family has ever had MS to my knowledge. So I didn't have, all I knew was my coworker. That was the face of MS for me. And she was living successfully with it. So I relied on her a lot. She was always very helpful to answer questions and give me some guidance or just
Did you ever think that MS might be contagious? Were you ever concerned about your son contracting MS?
Well, not necessarily contagious from the standpoint of like a cold or the flu necessarily, but Harry had made mention of there being some evidence of a genetic component, although there's other research evidence that hasn't linked the genetic component. So there is some, I guess, concern that, maybe my son has a chance of developing MS later in life. I've been told by the medical field that, he might have a slightly greater risk, but it's not a large risk by any means.
Well, what else have you not told our listeners this morning that you'd like to know about you and
Well,
MS?
I think that I just echo what all of us want to share here today, that life is not over, whether it's a diagnosis of MS or another chronic illness, that attitude has a lot to do with it, and we can really continue to lead full lives. They may not be exactly like we had envisioned, but I like to think that I'm a good mom, and our son is almost 8 now, so, he knows that Mom has some limitations, but, those don't scare him. We've tried to not make that anything to be, scared about. It's more of just awareness, and I try not to, tiptoe around the fact that I have MS. It doesn't take long of knowing me to know that I have MS, usually, because it is a part of my life. It's not all of who I am, but it is certainly, part of my daily existence. And living in hot, humid Memphis, going into the summer can have its challenges for all of us. So we have to make some adjustments in the warmer months for sure.
Mm-hmm. What about limitations?
Yes, thank goodness for air conditioning.
All right. Limitations?
For me, my symptoms are more sensory related. So I don't have any balance issues like a lot of folks do, but I have a lot of intolerance to, I don't feel hot and cold.
Now say it again.
On my right side of my body, I don't feel hot and cold. So what
do you mean?
Well, if I get into a hot shower, I don't know that it's hot. Or if I get into a freezing cold shower, I don't know that it's cold. It's a little hard to explain, but.
Well, you did.
But now on the left side of my body, I can feel hot and cold. Water is, for me, problematic. Water is painful to the touch. So I don't go swimming very often anymore. I love to go swimming, but to get into a pool for me is pretty painful. And then I also have 24/7 burning. So I burn, like I feel like my body is on fire. And so you can't see that, but that's how I feel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So.
What about your diet, Crystal?
Well, I actually, about 5.5 years ago, did make some changes to my diet, very similar to Harry's diet regimen. It's more of it keeps your core temperature low, or attempts to. It's more of, I liken it to a Mediterranean diet. So I haven't had red meat in 5.5 years. But there's plenty of people with MS that still eat red meat. But that's just a choice that, I've made personally. And I don't know per se that has helped me, but I know that each day I try to do everything I can to avoid my symptoms being worse, so that I can be the best that I can be for my family.
What about your husband, Chris, and your 8-year-old child? Any limitations for them? Do they eat whatever they want, do what they want to do?
Pretty much. They make adjustments to accommodate me. They don't just, run out the door and we'll see you later. We're going to go do what we want. And we kind of, as a family, have adjusted. We don't go to Disney World in July, for example. We try to go if we are lucky enough to go on a family vacation like that. We would go in a cooler month where it would be more enjoyable for me.
What else, Crystal, would you like to tell the listeners this morning?
Well, I'd like to introduce my friend Alan.
All right.
And let Alan share his experience as well, because it's just like the rest of us has had his own unique experience as well.
Okay. Good morning, Alan. Welcome to Talk It Out.
Thanks for having me, Don.
Tell us about yourself.
I am, like these people with me, another MS patient, probably the newbie in the group, I guess. I was only diagnosed about 3.5 years ago now.
And how are you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed.
You're very healthy looking.
I don't miss too many meals. Fortunately, MS
You like the red meat too, don't you?
Fortunately, MS doesn't affect my appetite. I found out through symptoms that were related to my vision. What Harry alluded to earlier, something called optic neuritis, was something that I woke up with completely unexpected one morning. The symptom that anyone would be able to understand what it was like for me to experience was if you've ever had a camera flashed in your eyes in a darkened room. You have a purple or a darkened spot that you see for several minutes. Mine lasted for a few days, and it was only in my left eye.
What'd you think?
I honestly thought I was paying the price for irresponsible use of contact lenses at first, of sleeping in my contacts like my doctor told me never to do. I thought it was perhaps an infection or something not healthy in one eye, and I thought if I got that contact out of there, I could sleep it off in a day or two. The symptoms actually progressed and worsened over the course of the next few days. My color vision began to go away. If you could imagine, a lot of people who use computers may edit pictures, and there's a little slider where you have color, and you can slide the image and make it black and white. My left eye, imagine the slider taken about halfway to black and white. I couldn't see reds. Yellow, a school bus that I knew darn well was yellow, looked almost white to me out of my left eye. That's when concern really hit me, and I got to an ophthalmologist. That was what, after the course of numerous tests, and MS, there's not an MS test per se. There's the MRI, there's the spinal tap that looks for the presence of a certain protein, which is indicative of the disease. But the diagnosis process is more the process of elimination, of finding out what it is not, and because the disease is notorious for mimicking many other known illnesses out there. Very common ones, Lyme disease, other inflammatory type diseases. But the ophthalmologist sent me to a neurologist, and then through the course of a few more tests, most of them imaging and other tests of my nerve responses, they diagnosed me within about 3 weeks of my initial symptoms.
And what was your reaction when you heard MS?
Shock and
Never thought
fear.
Never thought it, huh?
Not at all. Not at all. No family history. Very, very minimal knowledge of what it was at all, beyond a very basic overview of hearing the initials. That was about as familiar as the disease was to me, other than knowing a person in my past, like Crystal had mentioned, a coworker in her case. I had a friend's mother growing up had MS. No outward symptoms. None of us wear this disease on our face. We all appear to be fairly normal, healthy people,
Yep.
but it's an internal disease. It's a inflammatory process occurring in our brains and in our central nervous systems. So it is an inward disease for the patient. And I quickly, like many do in this day and age, tried to educate myself through Google and terrified myself to a point where I just closed the computer and thought I was doomed. I learned then that is not always the case, that the disease course varies greatly by the individual. All of us in this room, again, suffer different symptoms and have different periods between our last relapses. And Nicole, at 15 years. So it is a little hard to have a textbook case of MS. I don't think that exists. And that's one of the things we're getting awareness out to the general public, which is why we're all here with you today.
Yeah.
It is a challenge to explain what it is, because even modern science and our doctors don't quite know the answer to what that question is.
If somebody asks you, what is it? What do you tell them?
I would tell them that it is an incurable disease that is hard to describe, that has a very unpredictable nature in how it plays out its course within you. I have just as good of a chance of waking up tomorrow and my left arm not working as Harry has a chance of waking up tomorrow blind in one eye. Crystal experiences pain now where I do not. They both alluded to heat bothering them. I play golf all the time in this 105-degree heat index weather of Memphis. And I'm luckily, knock on wood, not currently affected by heat in a way that a pretty good portion of MS patients are.
Mm-hmm. Do you have children?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay. If you had children, would you be concerned, you think, that maybe they might have MS or get it?
Crystal spoke well about that and the fact that they are making connections, albeit minimal connections, to the genetic quotient or the genetic portion of the disease. As science and researchers are getting closer and closer to determining what the biological markers are of why this disease occurs, there is a genetic factor. There is also believed to be an environmental factor, maybe exposure to something in our environment, be that the diets that we eat, the chemicals in our food or in the air. That's not known. Also, there has been a correlation between where a person's heritage is from. People closer to the equatorial regions have a far less great instance of MS than those from the northern countries, higher up. Say, like me, I'm Scandinavian, Swedish background. A lot more MS than that. There is the belief that there is a vitamin D deficiency, and those further away from the equator, meaning they get less sun, there is one of the theories, anyway, leading to why this disease happens is that.
So you play golf all the time?
I do my best. I played yesterday.
Get your vitamin D that way.
I hope so. If it was genuinely a vitamin D problem, I've had tons of it my whole life.
Well, you're in pretty good shape, aren't you?
I mean, I could be in better shape. And the diet portion is something that we as patients can do, and I'm going to be the one in the room, I guess, to admit that I don't do that well. I really am a big fan of steaks and pizzas and the finer foods. If I hear I'm going to Chicago, I'm ecstatic because of what I'm going to eat, not so much the destination. So a good degree of fitness, minimizing stress, trying to remain active on the golf course. It's not an extreme high-impact sport, but I run around chasing the golf ball and probably walk a few miles through the course of a round of golf. Even if I'm riding in a cart, you still get some exercise. There are things we can do. I guess the four of us in this room now, probably one of our primary goals of what we do to manage MS is to just go through our life as normal. None of us are limited in a way yet, and hopefully it never occurs, to where we're dealing with walking assistance devices, whether it's a walker or a wheelchair or some of the more serious possibilities this disease can bring in its later stages.
Mm-hmm. Alan, let me go back to the support group. Would a more formalized support group have helped you, or would it help you now? It seems we have a support group here this afternoon or this morning, but it's not an organized. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is. Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to answer that because this support group did help me. My wife and I have been married now 15 years. This was just our anniversary passed. We both took the news pretty hard when we were told we had MS. All I heard were the bullet points of no cure, extremely devastating, a lot of other things that led to where our future was not what we had envisioned at all. Through the power of social media, which is actually on the site Facebook, a mutual friend of mine with Nicole had posted an article about MS, just an informative piece that had been published in a magazine, and it made mention of her name. So I asked my friend, hey, does this girl have MS? Because I hate to say it, but I just got diagnosed. I was then given a proper introduction to Nicole, who went out of her way to create an entire event on a Sunday so the other MS patients could come out and meet this new guy, which was me. And I got to see about, I'd say a dozen or so patients just came out for lunch. And my wife and I both took great strength out of that meeting, in that we just met a bunch of people that looked like us, that talked like us, that did what we did. And some of these people had talked about having the disease for 10 years or more. While everyone's disease course is different, that can still give someone hope, just to be around people in the same situation.
Very interesting. So how can we best communicate what we're talking about this morning? Do you do speaking in groups, church groups, civic organizations, or do any of you do that?
Since I have the microphone, I guess I'll go first. I'm on the board of trustees with the Mid-South chapter of the National MS Society. That group is part of the national organization, which is involved in raising funds and hosting events to bring income in towards research and the treatment treatment and care of the MS patients within our region. Our chapter covers the Memphis area all the way across over to the rest of the state and a portion into Kentucky. So that office is headed out of Nashville. The Tennessee chapter, which has a local Memphis office, can be found through the National MS Society's website. That is the nationalmssociety.org. Then from there, you can easily navigate your way to the Tennessee chapter, which is our governing body. Nicole and I both serve as patient advocates for the neuroscience company that manufactures the drug we take. They're known as disease-modifying drugs. We don't have a cure. Our drugs are intended to slow down our disease process. She and I have both been invited to speak on the behalf of that company, meet new patients, people who've been diagnosed as recently as last week. We may be the first person to talk to them and hopefully give them a little bit of hope that the future is not as dismal as it may initially appear or Google may lead you to believe. And then I'm also active as a member of Nicole's group. So that would be where I stand. If you want to...
Okay, Nicole, you'll answer the same thing.
Okay, and what was the question again?
Your support group. You are the support group.
I am the support group, and it's called Young Adults with MS, and we call it YAMS. And yes.
Who is a young adult? What age?
What age? Well, okay, let me explain. This started in 2007, so I was like in my early 30s. So now I'm 40, so I would say, like Crystal said, we're not going to discriminate, just whatever, basically. I mean, we have people as young as in their early 20s to people in their 50s, but it's whoever needs someone to talk to. I'm not going to tell someone they can't come to my group. You know, I mean, if they're up for going out and having a good time, going to lunch, going to brunch, talking and they're young at heart, and we're not going to dwell on the problem. We are going to focus on the solution, and we are very solution-based. I mean, we don't, and maybe every once in a while we're a little down and we might, lean on each other, but the whole thing is not all about crying and talking about how life was 50 years ago. And, well, of course, none of us were born then. But I mean, what I mean is, oh, what did you do before this happened? Oh, how is that? It's not about that. It's more about, some people didn't like that, but it's more about, how we're living our lives now. And we focus on what we can do. We don't focus on what we can't do because there's nothing, we can't do anything about that, and we're just very positive. So anyone who's up for a positive group, and that's, so it is on the website, as he mentioned, the mssociety.org. It's on there, and it will bring you to my page, and my phone number is listed on there as well for anyone who would like to talk to me. And
mssociety.org, right?
NationalMSSociety.org.
National MS Society.
Yes, thank you, Crystal.
.org.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you work... where do you work? What do you do?
Well, I actually work in a doctor's office.
Oh, really?
I do. I have a great time. I work up at the front desk. What I like about the job is that I remember being a patient and coming in and being so sad when in my early 20s and thinking that, nobody just understands anything I'm going through. And I knew that the receptionists were probably just thinking about their own lives. And, like any human being does, and I just want to talk to patients that come in and see how they're doing and just be personal with them because I know how it feels. You don't want to be at the doctor. Nobody wants to be at the doctor when you don't know what to.
You'd be very good at that too.
Yeah, I've been told I am.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
So that's what you do.
Yeah, I do that. And my passion is, the whole being an MS advocate. That's my passion, though, is to help people who are just newly diagnosed or maybe someone who's had it for 10 years. I want to help people. I want to be the person, like I said, I want to be the person I didn't have. And I do want to be an MS spokesperson. I love to be national one day. I mean, I'm local right now, but I want to spread the word. I want to spread the word that MS is not what it used to be. And speaking of that, he did ask me about some advancements that have been made. And what I'm going to say about that is basically 20 years ago when I was diagnosed, there was one medication out there. And I was darn lucky that it worked. Because now we have probably, I don't even know how many we have now, 10 or more. And what I always say is, yes, medications. And what I love is that I don't know how many we have. There's so many, and you can switch back and forth. You can do, there was nothing like that when I was diagnosed, or when, I had someone very close to me who had MS, and she was a family member, and she had nothing. I would love to know where her life would be if she would have had something.
Was she in a wheelchair?
Yes, beyond a wheelchair. I mean, it was like a stroke chair. And, of course, that's what I was in when I was in the hospital. And so I was so scared I was going to stay in that and be that way. Because, I couldn't even hold my head up. And I was so scared.
Nicole, you really are a good cheerleader.
Oh,
Seriously.
thank you. Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
Happy to do it.
Now, do you need money? Do you have any organization here or the national organization that needs any kind of funding?
We always need funding. Every penny brings us closer to a cure. I think Alan or Crystal they know more about the fundraising part. I just know I want everyone to help, and I want to help everybody, but I don't know what the websites are. So,
well, Chris, would you like
we need
to speak,
to tell someone else.
Either one.
Sure. The local support group that Nicole heads and that we're all part of is not focused on fundraising. However, the National MS Society and thereby our Tennessee chapter of that society is the primary fundraiser for this disease, and they host numerous events throughout the year that hopefully we would be able to determine when and where those are given the local news media sources. I appear on television or on, say, a radio broadcast like this or in print, leading up to information about the walk or the bike ride, etc. All of the upcoming and future events are also listed on the website at the nationalmssociety.org that we've made mention a couple of times. Really, that would be the best resource available to determine when and where and how you can donate. Direct donations, of course, are always welcome as well, whether there's an event or not.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak up?
Well, I remember one of the good descriptions of MS that I was told was your nerves are like electrical cords, and all the plastic around the electrical cord has worn away. So it's like touching an exposed wire.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I get, pretty much all through my arms and over here. When there was a couple of times where I'd be playing, I used to tour around with a band called the Angel Sluts, and I was the singer. And I would think I was shocking. I touched the microphone, and I would think that I was being shocked, but it wasn't. It was just the MS. So,
okay. Anybody else? They are handing it to you. They want you to get the last word.
Oh well, thank you. I think. I think really again we just want to leave everyone. Positive attitude in anything you do, no matter what your faith is, no matter what your support system is, to just have that positive attitude and to seek out resources. I will say the local chapter of the National MS Society for me and my family really helped a lot because they provided a lot of materials and referrals to local neurologists that see MS patients. So they really kind of help to point us in the right direction and give us.
Talks about the different nurses and doctors that we have. So I feel
we can't hear a word you say.
Oh, we all kind of talk about the different nurses and doctors that we have. So it's a good resource for who's a good doctor and where's a good resource.
Nicole Fox,
plus the
thank
Facebook
you very much
page.
for arranging the program today.
Well, thank
you and I
you.
were on the telephone quite a bit together.
We were.
And I appreciate it, enjoyed it, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
And also to Harry and to Crystal and to Alan, thank you all for coming this morning to talk it out. In the meantime, if there's anything you'd like to discuss on Talk It Out, give me a call at 526-0023. So on behalf of Dr. George Flynn Broadcasting, all of us at his radio stations, we wish you all a pleasant Sunday, a real good week and smile, because God loves you, and so do I.
You've been listening to Talk It Out with Father Don Mowery, founder of Youth Service USA. Talk It Out has been on the air for more than 40 years and is produced in the studios of Flynn Broadcasting.